This is a Crypto Legends podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Adam Biel from Fiat Republic, and you're listening to Crypto Legends, the show where we meet the legends and creators of Web3. Today we have the great pleasure of having Sam Kopelman, country manager for the UK at Luno, on the show. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So we've seen, all sorts of movements into the sports industry from crypto exchanges, FTX, crypto.com, to name a couple. All are admirable efforts, or really good things to see. But there's a lot of potential in music experiences with crypto, for example. So Luno in particular is interested in that, and Sam here is very interested in that in his role at Luno. So you've developed partnerships with music festivals, All Points East to KOKO, 122-year-old cultural tradition. We've had Charlie Chaplin in that, and Kanye West, quite extreme, quite extreme opposites. But you're the brains of this. So if you could just expand on, how did it come about, like that sort of strategy, and what Luno, hopes to accomplish by focusing on that particular field.
Sure. As you said, sport is a really interesting category as well. We've seen lots of activity there. I think just generally what we're trying to do in the crypto space is connect with people through mediums and channels which they're more used to. And sports, that's very mass market, brings people together. So you can really see why that kind of connection exists. And it seems to be, quite an effective bridge into crypto. Maybe there's also an element of the volatility and supporting a team. I don't know if that's actually a connection, but, it's quite a roller coaster. Emotionally, you're very involved. One week, if you have a good result, it's amazing. Then your team might not perform so well. And so I think particularly in the early days of, how crypto markets move, there is a connection in that volatility, which maybe makes it easier for people to jump from one space to another. I don't know if that's proven, but that's definitely one connection.
It's an interesting theory, I think, for sure.
But even if that's not the reason, it definitely has worked. So a lot of companies have managed to connect with more of a mass market audience through sport. I think that's still going to prove effective, but it's not the only one. So there are various other, I think, effective ways to kind of approach reaching that beginner audience. And music, it has some similarities to sport in that it brings people together. You have that feeling of euphoria when you're together with people and connection. But there are some interesting, I think, differences in that you're not really competing. You probably have fewer negative emotions as well. So everyone's there to have a great time. It unites everyone, you connect. So there's that positivity. And also you have that relationship with the artist. So the artist is really focused on the audience directly. And that's kind of the point of the experience. Whereas obviously when you're going to a sports match, the focus is on the competition and you're just there observing around it. So there's an interesting way to connect, I think, directly with fans and, artists, musicians. If we just think about influencers generally, they have such strong engagement with their following. They really connect with people. They kind of even become part of someone's identity, depending on who you really kind of connect with and whose music you listen to. So I think broadly, that's why I think the space is really interesting and it hasn't been explored yet much. So that's the route that we're taking at the moment, particularly in the UK for Luno.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's really, I'm very keen to ask you kind of expand more into that space. But maybe before we do that, let's go back to Luno itself, and then just leverage that sort of positive emotion that you talked about just now, when people are engaging with music. So current climate obviously is not as positive as many would hope that it would be. um, and the name of the company, Luno or Luna, I think, is about the moon or going to the moon. So how does that positioning resonate in the current times? Like, do you guys have challenges with your positioning, or are you actually finding that it's helping uphold that sort of positive or positivity, that optimism around the brand?
Yeah, I don't think it's widely known maybe that Luno means moon in another language. So in Esperanto, this language which doesn't exist even anymore, but their translation is moon. And within crypto, the association is to the moon. So there's that kind of bullish way of thinking about things, but that's not necessarily why we chose the name. I think more the reason is that, the moon, wherever you are in the world or whoever you are, everyone looks up at the moon, and it's the same there. It's kind of almost a leveler, an equalizer for everyone. And that kind of reflects what crypto can be in the financial system, making things more equitable, fair. So it's that kind of aspirational view, which I think we connect with more, rather than the kind of the bullishness of going to the moon.
Got it. So more like a signpost, right? To follow or to look up to see. Interesting. And so you're in Luno UK, focusing specifically on entertainment and music. We talked about that a little bit, but this is not what you've been doing personally, or that's not what your career was or has been about. You started in tech and logistics. So how do you get from that, and then I think you were also working for a platform for booking private chefs as well. So how do you go from that to crypto and to Luno?
Yeah, I think the transition to crypto isn't kind of natural for anyone because it's such a new outlier of an industry. But tech, I've always just been interested in. I wasn't really too sure exactly which direction I wanted to go in, but I wanted to work for tech companies and to go grow things. So yeah, my first experience was with Rocket Internet, who are kind of quite well known for building companies at quite a fast pace. And that was just a great experience to kind of just get to know all the various aspects of a tech company. And I was quite fortunate in that, I had relatively little experience, pretty much no experience, in fact, coming out of university. But they still kind of took a gamble, as they often do, actually, with young professionals, and sent me out to Eastern Europe to set up sort of an Amazon type business, a clone of Amazon. So yeah, I kind of found myself a couple of weeks after university flying to Belarus, to Minsk. And they're kind of setting up a legal entity and trying to build, the top e-commerce website in the country. So that was, just learning by doing. Had like lots of support from global teams, but I was the only person on the ground initially. And yeah, so I had to, build a team, a few dozen people. And yeah, so that kind of solidified my interest in technology generally. And then after that, I kind of moved on to another couple of platforms. So I worked in Berlin for a while. And then, as you mentioned, in Paris for a private chef booking platform, La Belle Assiette. That was a totally different experience because it wasn't anywhere near as mass market as an e-commerce business.
I can imagine the sort of elite feeling of, hiring private chefs.
Yeah, and in some ways, actually, I think the challenges we face in crypto about, bringing it to a more mainstream audience and changing the perceptions of it are in some ways relatable to what I was doing at La Belle Assiette, in that we really wanted to democratize the idea of having a private chef at home. so that it will be, it's not just a case of the elites having chefs cooking for them every day, but actually on special occasions, instead of going to a restaurant, you could book a chef for a really reasonable amount, so like between 30 to 50 pounds per head. So there was that concept which we kind of wrapped up and wanted to essentially compete with restaurants when it came to special occasions, which I think was quite it's a big challenge, particularly for a small tech platform. But yeah, it was really interesting to think about how do we develop this. There's the supply and demand problem, like do you get more chefs on board? The classic kind of the Uber question of like what do you build out first, supply and demand. So yeah, that was a really kind of an interesting couple of years where we built the business in the UK. And following that, I was really interested in just going into a different industry entirely, trying something new. Fintech always kind of stood out as a potential route, and crypto at the time I think we were going through sort of a crypto winter, similar to what we have now. So it was a good time to get involved and get to know the industry before the next bull run, which happened last year.
Yeah. So you were talking, and the crypto winter was the 2018 crypto winter.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, fun times, fun times, absolutely. Great. Well, so just spending a little bit of time on Luno itself, right? So 10 million users, 40 countries. It's quite global. And the story or the prevalent theme here is emerging markets, right? So how do you address an emerging market? Like how do you enter? Obviously, you've done this very successfully as Luno. And how do you achieve that leading position in emerging markets, which is like something that not it's not something that they teach you in strategy courses or MBA programs, right? It's something that you really need to like organically, empirically experience. So what is the winning strategy there?
So I think we had an advantage in that we were first mover in many of these emerging markets. And I think that's a huge thing. So we understood the local market. We had people, our founders in the first market where we started operating, they knew the ecosystem. And yeah, so we were the first to move, and we got the foundations in place pretty quickly. The fiat rails to be able to move from local currency to crypto. And so just being able to move at the right time, understanding the market and getting the foundations in place was already, most of the job. And in that, if we're comparing it to markets like the US or the UK, in fact, the platforms now that are doing the best were also the first movers. I think generally in crypto, that's a huge benefit because your brand is kind of just associated with the space itself. So yeah, I think that's really helped us. But also I think we've just continued developing relationships, focusing really deep on each market, not giving up. So like we had a good example in Malaysia where we spent a lot of time speaking, with the government and eventually managed to get a license to operate there. So after 2 years, in fact, of working on this and speaking to regulatory bodies, we managed to get that license, which now sets us up for success over the long term. And I'm not sure how many companies maybe would have held out for so many years and made such a bet on that market. So yeah.
Makes sense. I mean, no, sometimes it's about like noticing that opportunity and just seizing it, right? And going for it and just being persistently, focused on it, right? And certainly sounds like that's something that you guys have done well. So and then on the let's say global versus the UK, which is I guess your remit, how does it differ? Right? So how does the global, user acquisition strategy differ from the one that you're leading here in the UK?
Yeah. I think We take an approach by market. So we don't necessarily have like a global versus local. It's essentially just lots of different local approaches based on what we think is going to be most effective for each country. So I mean, for the UK, we know that it's a developed market with many different companies working in the space, and that we need to build some sort of differentiation and probably connect with customers in a way that many brands within fintech have struggled to do. So I think that's why we've taken the approach with music, because that's going to be one way for us to really connect and become that local brand that people recognize and see kind of as culturally relevant in the UK. So I think forms of that strategy exist across markets, but then it really depends on what we think will achieve what we need to based on our current market share. For example, if we have a lot of market share, we probably wouldn't be taking as many exploratory channels and bets. It'll be more about kind of community development, focusing more on our customer base, word of mouth, that type of thing. But definitely in markets where we weren't the first mover, where we arrived quite late and we know there's a lot of other companies operating, that's where I think we take big bets, we explore new channels, and really see what's going to move the needle considerably for the long term.
It's great. Sounds like a winning strategy, especially if you like persistently continue to kind of rely on that for growth. So in terms of just going back to what we started talking about before, music in particular and educating people, right? So you were saying it's always easier to educate people on the basis of positive emotions, right? And this is why you're investing so much into music or connection into music, right? So that kind of relates to passions and interests and stuff that people, like to spend their free time on. So can you talk to us a little bit more about like why did you choose music industry out of all of the other sort of entertainment industries even that also provide this positive emotion and positive reinforcement? What is so special about the music industry that helps you educate people about blockchain and crypto and all of those concepts?
Yeah, I think it's an industry that's been around almost forever. So everyone's engaged or has some relationship to music, even if not always going to a gig. It's part of your life, and it's just something which will stay, for as long as probably humanity is around. So it's that again, that piece of everyone's life that you can't ignore, and so connecting ourselves to something which is so core to kind of the human experience, and then finding ways to support artists. I think there's an interesting parallel with how artists think about their careers and how many different intermediaries they have involved, from their managers to their record label, and the way that the financial system maybe operates with the number of intermediaries you have and third parties involved. I think crypto generally as a technology can really support artists to be more independent, make more of their careers, not be as reliant on a few other kind of powerful third parties. And beyond that, I think the connection between artists and fans can become a lot stronger through what crypto offers. So we've seen, some use cases with NFTs, but there are other ways that fans can support artists directly, again without having third parties involved, through whatever it might be, such as crypto donations, or tokens which could be issued from artists. So yeah, there's numerous ways where we can actually show the real use cases of crypto. Maybe that's an effective introductory point for people to understand the potential of the technology, and then around that we can educate what the other use cases may be, and also explain as an investment how it works and how it can form part of a broader investment strategy.
Yeah, this is fascinating. And just to double click on that sort of crypto versus NFTs, right? Because like obviously we've got two different concepts here. You mentioned a couple of things. So you mentioned payment with crypto, right? But then also issuing NFT tokens. Which ones are more aligned with what you guys want to do at Luno in terms of your specific agenda? Like which is it, crypto, or is it the, let's say, the NFT and the metaverse community?
I think well, NFTs, as we know, they haven't been around for a huge amount of time, so it's still early days. At Luno, we're focused on crypto, and we actually don't offer a huge number of coins. We try to tailor things to give customers more of a kind of curated selection of coins, which have more of a track record and can probably protect them in terms of long-term decision making. So we're like fairly tentative, I'd say, when we think about where else to expand to, but also we're part of a broader company, so Digital Currency Group, which covers quite a few different categories. And so, potentially we would explore other things as it develops. But at Luno, for now, it's really about the investment use case and giving people that really simple introduction to cryptocurrency so that they can convert their local currency into crypto and be guided along the way. So I think a big part of it is to show people the right experience, not just allow total access to everything and leave them to do their own thing, but actually guide them and provide the right information at the right points of the journey so that they can take, considered long-term decisions.
Yeah, I mean, if you can convince my mom in Poland to buy crypto, I will be eternally grateful.
We can give it a go. Yeah.
I can even give you an NFT for that. But yeah, that's just kind of to strengthen your point about local, right? Education and holding that person's hand as they're going through that journey for the first time. So speaking of holding people's hands or kind of encouraging them to enter a space, right? In May this year, you were doing Bitcoin giveaways at the Canucks show, but with a bit of a twist. Can you tell us a bit about the twist?
Yeah. So we have a long-term partnership with KOKO, this music venue in North London. As you mentioned, it's an iconic venue. It's been around for decades, and we really decided to work with them because I think they have a really interesting approach to marrying kind of the history of their venue and music with the potential that technology can bring to like the evolution of music going forward. And so there are so many different ways that we can engage with fans and, as an example, bring artists closer to fans within a venue like KOKO. So it's a 1,500 person capacity space. It feels quite intimate, but also is big enough for you to kind of really feel like that you're part of a big music experience. And Nux is a rapper that's worked very closely with KOKO. He's really kind of leading the next generation of London-born rappers, and he was performing his first gig at KOKO, and so we had a few discussions and suggested, it might be quite interesting if he on stage did a giveaway to some fans, so he can actually stop his set halfway and say, "I'm going to be giving away some Bitcoin to two fans." And so the way we did it operationally was everyone who came through to the venue who bought a ticket, they got a wristband on entry. And it's one of those glow-in-the-dark wristbands. They've been quite famous at Coldplay concerts where they have 50,000 people in a stadium, everyone with a glowing wristband as a really kind of a magical effect. But yeah, kind of wristband, which then obviously you can control technically, like when does it glow, which colors does it glow with. And so when Nux stopped the show, everyone's wristbands lit up white, and he did a countdown. So he kind of counted down from 10 to 1, and at that point all the wristbands switched off apart from two that turned to red, So you had like pitch black darkness in KOKO and just two people with red wristbands, and they were the winners. So
Nice.
yeah, so it was, I think, a really really interesting, engaging way for people to be kind of part of it, part of the experience. And then two fans, they actually shared one Bitcoin with Nux, so everyone got a third of a Bitcoin. And the idea now is for them to kind of stay in touch and actually talk about, what are they going to do with this investment. Potentially, they can actually invest in some things together. So now kind of the journey doesn't stop there. I think all three, two fans and Nux are going to be involved, and we'll see, how their investment progresses, over the next couple of years.
Very cool. Who came up with that?
I think between KOKO and our marketing team, we kind of formed together. When these things are rarely like a one person has a light bulb moment. It's a kind of a suggestion, and then everyone kind of builds on it.
Very cool. Very cool. I love it. And so how so we talked about music, right? What's the larger strategy on in entertainment? How are you going to use entertainment in a wider way at Luno? Are you going to take the sort of learnings from music industry, or a different approach to perhaps other entertainment industries, like works of art, paintings, or digital paintings, right? Are you going to venture into those kind of areas as well?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on each market. So, every local team decides what they think is best and what's the fastest and most effective way for us to reach a mass market audience in that local country. So music might make sense. But I think, in other markets such as Malaysia, where we have a substantial market share, we've gone down the sport angle first. But that's another great thing of being part of a global company where essentially every country decides for itself, because we can really share our experiences and take, what has worked and try to implement it in our respective countries as well. I think music is a big enough space to explore generally without branching out into entertainment more broadly, at least for the UK at the moment. But probably there will come a time where we'll look to expand, as long as it still makes sense in combination with what we've done. We don't just want to just branch out into lots of different categories just for the sake of it. But yeah, I think music, as I said, is a big enough opportunity to kind of focus on for the time being.
So so we talked about a little bit about the past, about the present, yourself, Luno, entertainment, and the strategy there. So looking forward, how do you think entertainment and art, I guess, if we expand this a little bit, and those experiences associated with those two things, right, will contribute to cryptocurrency and digital assets going more mainstream?
Yeah, well, as we discussed, the use cases I think can be very interesting. So whether it's NFTs or connections between artists, entertainers, influencers directly with their fans, there are ways there that kind of crypto will very clearly, I think, prove itself as a technology that can bring people together. But outside of that, I think it's still very early days. I think another part of it is just the content creation side. So if we connect with artists and broadly people in the creative space and create content with them, which is authentic, talking about crypto, educational content, then that already go a long way. I think the authenticity is the key part there. Broadly within the influencer space, it's very easy for a brand to connect with almost any influencer and create some kind of generic content, which is just very clearly commercial and drives through to an action. But there are so many content creators out there that are interested in crypto already and have a genuine connection to it. And so I think like the big opportunity is to use people within those space that have an authentic voice, and work with them to create authentic content, which can then help us develop the curiosity of more of a mainstream audience. And then once they're ready, they can then come through and explore investment opportunities and everything else. But I think the right thing is for it to be done at the right pace. So if people decide for themselves, I'm going to engage with this content. I'm going to try crypto for the first time when I'm comfortable with it, and then not to be kind of a very clear hard sell, which I think people really puts people off cryptocurrency, because we've seen the number of kind of crypto related scams out there, which are all about investing quickly. So there's a lot there, I think, that art and entertainment and these spaces, working with people established in those spaces, can do to mitigate all these concerns that people still have around crypto and kind of the speculative aspect of it.
Yeah, it's very, very fascinating the way you describe it. Like there's the the initial barrier, right, of trust. Is like that doesn't necessarily exist, and to breach it or to kind of enable that engagement, you might need to look at demographics that are actually more conducive to the sort of content or the experiences that you're creating, right? I remember the concerts that they used to do during COVID on Fortnite. For example, right? Those are like worlds in of themselves already, like with millions of, tens of millions, or hundreds of millions of players. Imagine a cryptocurrency related experience in that as part of that concert. Let's say Ariana Grande's concert, right, on Fortnite, and engaging that sort of younger generation or younger demographic that are perhaps a bit more conducive or more open to take that level of risk or take that leap of faith to try something new, because as you were saying at the beginning, they're part of a very positive experience, right, that elicits very positive emotions. Might as well do something a bit more risky. How do you think about those things at Luno, or is that something that you guys consider as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really big opportunity generally for the crypto industry, to use those channels, those categories which are so well known, such as sports and music, and then to work with influencers to show very clearly how crypto can benefit them. So whether you're watching a live stream and donating to a charity through crypto, or whatever else it might be, or being issued limited edition NFTs from a specific artist, all these things, I think, if kind of curated and done in the right way, can really prove how crypto works. Can kind of trigger that initial point of curiosity for a really large mainstream audience. And then after that, once they already have an incentive to learn more, then I think it's about, how do we create a journey which is going to be trustworthy and guided, and not just open the floodgates entirely to every possible crypto investment, because we know, once you've gone down the rabbit hole, it's really, it's hard to stop sometimes, and to think about, all the different options within cryptocurrency. And then you hear about, people making an investment into coins which no one's really heard of, and you have those edge cases where someone quickly makes a lot of money. I think that stuff at some point within everyone's crypto journey that starts kind of bringing you in. I think it's important when we think about the next hundreds of millions of people who come into crypto, for them to be guided in a way where they won't fall kind of prey to that kind of allure. And that's, I think, where at Luno we spend a lot of time thinking about, what journey should that look like once we've made a connection with people, and how can we offer a kind of responsible investment experience, which we can then kind of distribute at scale. And a big part of that distribution strategy is also working with local governments and authorities, so that we're doing it in a way which is conducive to to their plans for the country, and that also falls within kind of how they see the development of technology in that country. So in the UK, there have been quite a few statements around making the UK a crypto hub, which is really positive. But we don't necessarily know exactly what that means. So it's still, still very early days. We definitely at Luno want to be in a regulated space. We think that's going to help reach a lot more people faster in a more responsible way. But it's taking time. There isn't really a clear framework. I think so. That's a really important piece, not just on kind of the marketing promotional side, but also just purely on the regulatory side in terms of being registered correctly and being able to operate with clarity, without kind of speed bumps on the way.
Yeah, and that's then very instrumental in kind of getting trust from your sort of target audiences, who now all of a sudden have a structure or a framework to kind of look where they feel protected, right? Where that sort of barrier of lack of trust is somehow addressed by a common standard in a way, right? Which is regulation.
I think that the trust element runs all the way through it. So from the category that we choose to the venues we work with and the artists, the content we create, and then the journey someone takes to come through to crypto. And then also just, is that an environment which is regulated? Is it going to be trustworthy? Is it going to be around long term? So people want to know, of course, that when they're putting their money into a particular product, that there are some safeguards in place. And that although we're a large global crypto company, having the backing and like the support of local authorities really helps as well.
Great. No, you definitely are unique in this sort of holistic approach to sort of educate and convert people to crypto or digital assets. I haven't seen many companies doing similar things in such a elaborate fashion, cutting across different entertainment sectors and considering what is perceived how by whom. This is really a rarity, I would say, in the industry, and we need more of that at an industry level. But all power to you for being a first mover, as you said, in some of those local markets, but also in some of the more mature markets like the UK, clearly evidenced as well. So just finishing where we started on Luno specifically. So we talked about the moon, although you then dispelled my initial assumption that that's where the name came from. But what are you focusing on right now? What's the biggest thing, like a project, if you can obviously share, to help the crypto industry perhaps recover or get back on track?
Yeah, I think just generally all the companies still operating within the crypto space that are established, that have the resources to push crypto forward. I think it's important for us not to disappear during crypto winter periods, because I think sometimes that actually exacerbates the perception of just crypto being a bubble or being too volatile, because as soon as there's a bull run, there's a huge inflow of money and revenue to many companies. And then, we've seen huge marketing campaigns, which bring a lot of visibility. And then suddenly there's a pushback, which is a pullback, which is understandable because things are really correlated to the price. For many companies, their business health is correlated to that. So it's understandable why we've seen a reduction in kind of mass awareness campaigns. But I think it's important for major companies not to shy away and to continue pushing forward, because the reason we exist is because we believe this is here for the long term, and that cycles are just a natural part of how the industry operates. So it doesn't mean we need to continue doing the same level of mass market awareness, but I do think it's important not to disappear and not to give the perception that we've been over bullish, and like now we're kind of disappearing until things warm up again.
Couldn't agree more. This roller coaster of winter and then summer needs to be carefully managed and navigated, and companies need to position themselves and pivot, and have the capacity to pivot as well, because otherwise it hinders, as you said, the trust and the overall thing, right, in the industry. On that note, let's finish here. Thank you so much, Sam. You are a crypto legend to me by making some really very interesting remarks and providing us with some amazing insights. Pleasure to have you on the show. And for everybody else, stay tuned for more tales from the crypto industry. We bring you those inspiring stories of Web3. Crypto Legends is to be continued. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here.